This week on PS2 Tuesdays, it's time to take a look at the first game in the now vast Ratchet Clank series. Back in the heyday of the PS2, my platforming allegiance was firmly with the Jak and Daxter series, and I didn't really play any of the Ratchet and Clank or Sly Cooper games. The recent release of all of these trilogies in HD on the PS3 is a really great thing, as it allows us to play these fantastic games looking better than ever. Without further preamble, let's dive in and see what Ratchet & Clank has to offer gamers today. The story of Ratchet & Clank is actually pretty decent for a platforming game, and is played out in some nicely acted cutscenes. There is a strong range of characters, from the heroic duo of Ratchet, a furry cat-like creature called a Lombax, and Clank, a war robot that was rejected for being too small, to the bumbling idiot Captain Quark, and the villainous Ultimate Supreme Executive Drek. In the updated HD version, it is a bit of a shame that most of the cutscenes are still in the 4:3 screen ratio when everything else is in widescreen. This can be a bit jarring. The visuals of Ratchet & Clank are still really good today, with a large variety of different environments to explore, from a bustling metropolis planet, deserts, a space station full of hideous alien creatures, swamps and many more. You're never stuck in one place for particularly long, and there are even quite distinct areas within the same level. For example, on the space station level you can explore the main station from the inside, venture out onto the outside of the station as Clank, or take a transport over to a derelict warship. It's all nice and atmospheric. The music in this game is amazing. Just listen to some of the tunes that are playing in the background of this video. Most of it is quite funky and upbeat, with the occasional area having slower and more foreboding music where it is suitable. The sound effects are also well done too, with the many different weapons making their own distinctive noise when fired. Then you have the tinkly sound as you collect bolts, which triggers a positive response in your brain each time you hear it, much like the coin collecting sound in Mario or the ring effect in Sonic. Finally, as I touched upon earlier, the voice acting in the game is absolutely magnificent. Mike Kelly plays Ratchet, and David Kay actually plays a whole bunch of different roles, including Clank, Sam the Scrap Merchant, Bob and Blarg Scientist, a very talented individual. Though this first game in the series is pretty fun to play for the most part, the gameplay isn't quite fully formed yet. The huge range of varied, humorous weaponry is present and correct, though they don't gain experience and level up like they do from the second game onwards. That adds such an addictive quality and the sense that you're always getting better, but without it the game can feel a little flat at times. There are also several nasty difficulty spikes throughout the game. The first one is when you have to complete a hoverboard race on one of the planets, which is incredibly frustrating to do and will see you restarting the race over and over and over until you finally get it right. One small mistake sends you to the back of the pack. Then later on, the enemies suddenly start taking 3 or 4 hits to kill instead of 1 or 2, and the missions ramp up in difficulty dramatically. The weapons also start getting ludicrously expensive, so if you want to compensate for the tougher enemies with increased firepower, then you will have to do quite a lot of grinding for bolts. Aside from these frustrations though, the levels are nicely designed, and the range of things you have to do, from swinging on your grapple beam, hacking doors and changing the water level with your displacement tool, are all pretty enjoyable. It's just not quite on the same level as some of the games that came after it. The original Ratchet & Clank was the first time that we saw Insomniac Games' now trademark range of crazy weaponry, including the Glove of Doom, which set tiny killer robots on your enemies. Of course, they would improve on this formula in later games with the likes of the disco ball weapon that forces enemies to stop what they're doing and dance, but this was the foundation for the titles that followed. A copy of the original PS2 version of Ratchet & Clank can be yours for around a tenner, while a copy of the remastered HD Trilogy can be picked up for about 30 quid. If you have a PS3, definitely go with the latter, as Sony have done a fantastic job updating these games. The game will take you a decent amount of time to complete, say around 12 hours for the basics, and longer if you want to seek out all the hidden golden bolts. The chances that you will want to replay the game anytime soon aren't all that high though, because the sequels are so much better and this first game can get pretty darn frustrating towards the end. The first game in the Ratchet & Clank series was a pretty solid effort and gained a lot of fans, but the formula wasn't really perfected until the second and third games in the series. Worth picking up as part of the HD Trilogy collection, but it might be worth going straight to Ratchet & Clank 2 if you're going to play these on the PS2. Next season I will be reviewing Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Then when I eventually get to Season 5, we'll be returning to the Jak and Daxter trilogy with Jak 2 Renegade. There's plenty of other PS2 reviews to look forward to in the meantime though.